I just bought a $2 million villa on the oceanfront, and as soon as my sister found out, she called me and said, "We're on our way to you. There will be 15 of us. Prepare beds, towels, slippers, food. We'll be staying for 3 weeks. We'll be there in 40 minutes. So hurry up." I smiled. Hi everyone. I'm Madison, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how I handled my sister thinking she could just barge into my villa with her friends. If you've ever dealt with family members who treat you like a free hotel, then don't miss this story. Hit subscribe if you enjoy stories about setting boundaries with family. You know, looking back at that phone call, I wasn't even surprised. Brittany has always treated me like her personal assistant, her backup plan, her safety net. But let me start from the beginning, because this pattern didn't just happen overnight. It's been building my entire life. Growing up, I was always the understanding little sister. You know the type, the one who had to be mature beyond her years, the one who never got to be the priority. Brittany was 3 years older than me, and somehow that 3-year gap became the foundation for a lifetime of being second place in my own family. I remember when I turned 16. 16! That's supposed to be a milestone birthday, right? Every girl dreams of her sweet 16. I had been planning this party for months, saving up my babysitting money for decorations, making guest lists, coordinating with friends. My parents had promised me we could have it at our house, and I was so excited I could barely sleep for weeks. But 3 days before my birthday, Brittany came home crying. She was 19 and had just found out that her prom date had asked someone else. Apparently, she needed money for a new dress, shoes, makeup, hair, nails, the whole 9 yards. The problem? My parents had already spent the party budget on something else, and suddenly my sweet 16 became negotiable. "Madison, honey, you understand, right?" my mom said, sitting on my bed while I stared at the ceiling. "Brittany really needs this. Prom only happens once. And she's so heartbroken. You can have a party next year. Or maybe we can do something small this weekend instead." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that my birthday only happened once too, that I had been planning this for months, that I mattered too, but instead I heard myself saying, "Yeah, okay, I understand." That became my catchphrase, "I understand." No matter what was taken from me, no matter how many times I was asked to step aside for Brittany's needs, I understood. Because good little sisters understand, right? The party money went to Brittany's prom expenses. My sweet 16 became a dinner at Applebee's with just my parents, where they spent half the time talking about how beautiful Brittany looked in her new dress. I sat there, picking at my loaded potato skins, realizing that this was probably how the rest of my life would go. And I was right. When Brittany needed a car for college, guess whose college fund got borrowed? When she wanted to pledge the expensive sorority, guess who was expected to pick up extra babysitting jobs to help the family out? When she decided to change majors for the 3rd time, extending her college by 2 years, guess who was told that her own college plans needed to be more practical and cost-effective? By the time I was 15, I was working part-time at a local coffee shop. Not because we desperately needed the money, but because I realized that if I wanted anything, clothes that weren't hand-me-downs, school supplies that weren't whatever was left over, a chance to go on the senior trip, I was going to have to pay for it myself. I remember the day it really hit me. I was 17, working double shifts on weekends, and I had finally saved enough money to buy myself a used car. Nothing fancy, just a little Honda Civic that would get me to work and school without having to beg for rides or take the bus. I was so proud of that car. I had earned every single dollar that paid for it. The day I brought it home, Brittany took one look at it and said, "Oh, good. Now I don't have to drive you places anymore. And I can borrow it when my car is in the shop." Not, "Congratulations, Madison." Not, "Wow, you worked so hard for this." Just immediate assumptions about how my achievement could benefit her. When I hesitated, my parents jumped in with the usual routine. "Family helps family, Madison. It's just a car. Sharing is caring. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That was their favourite word for me whenever I showed even the slightest reluctance to hand over whatever I'd worked for. God forbid! I wanted to keep something I had earned myself. That night, I sat in my little Honda in the driveway and cried. Not because of the car. I knew I'd end up sharing it because that's what I always did. I cried because I finally understood my place in this family. I was the understated, the backup plan, the one who made everyone else's life easier by never asking for anything in return. I was 17 years old, and I already felt invisible. College was supposed to be my escape, but even that became about Brittany somehow. I chose a state school with good financial aid because I knew my parents couldn't afford to pay for both of us to go to expensive universities. Brittany, meanwhile, was at a private college that cost more per semester than most people make in a year. Every time I called home, the conversation somehow circled back to Brittany's latest crisis. She needed money for textbooks. She was struggling in her classes and needed a tutor. She wanted to study abroad but couldn't afford it. The family emergency fund, which was supposed to be for both of us, always seemed to have just enough for whatever Brittany needed, but was mysteriously empty whenever I had an expense. I learned to stop asking. I took out student loans, worked 2 jobs, ate ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I care to remember. But I made it through. I graduated with honours, landed a good job, and slowly started building my own life. The crazy thing is, I thought things would change once we were both adults. I thought maybe, with some distance and maturity, we could have a normal sister relationship. I thought my parents would start treating us as equals instead of treating me like Brittany's support staff. I was wrong. Even now, at 32, the pattern continues. Take Thanksgiving, just 2 months ago. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. I had just closed a major deal with my online business. I run a digital marketing consultancy that specializes in e-commerce brands, and I was excited to share the good news with my family. I had also just made the down payment on my villa, and I was bursting to tell them about this incredible milestone. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I called my mum to ask what I could bring to dinner. "Oh," she said, and I could hear the awkwardness in her voice immediately. "Madison, honey, I thought Brittany told you. We're having dinner at her place this year. It's going to be small, just immediate family." My heart sank. Am I not immediate family? "Of course you are, sweetie. It's just..." "Well, you know how you are with your work. We figured you'd be too busy, and Brittany was so excited to host, and her apartment is kind of small." The excuses kept coming, but I had stopped listening. Too busy, my work, as if I had ever, even once, chosen work over family dinner, as if I hadn't been asking about Thanksgiving plans for weeks. Did anyone think to actually ask me if I was available? I asked. Long pause. Well, we just assumed. They assumed I wouldn't mind being excluded from the family gathering. They assumed I'd be fine spending Thanksgiving alone. They assumed wrong, but here's the kicker. Later that week, Brittany called me. Hey, so Mum told me about the Thanksgiving thing. I hope you're not upset, she said, not sounding particularly concerned about whether I was upset or not. But actually, I was hoping you could help me out. The whole dinner is going to cost way more than I thought. And you know how tight money is for me right now with the new apartment and everything. Could you Venmo me like $300 just to help cover the turkey and sides and stuff? I sat there, phone in my hand, trying to process what I was hearing. Not invited to Thanksgiving dinner, but expected to pay for it. You want me to pay for a dinner I'm not invited to? I asked. Oh, come on, Madison. Don't be dramatic. It's not that you're not invited. It's just that we thought you'd be busy. But family helps family, right? And you're doing so well with your business and everything. Family helps family. The magic phrase that had been used to extract money, time, effort, and sacrifice from me my entire life, but somehow never seemed to apply when I needed help. I'll think about it, I told her, and hung up. I didn't send the money. Instead, I spent Thanksgiving alone in my apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and working on plans for my villa. It was actually one of the most peaceful Thanksgivings I'd had in years. The villa. God, I was so excited about that villa. It had taken me 8 years of building my business, living below my means, and making smart investments to save up for it. 8 years of saying no to expensive vacations, designer clothes, and fancy dinners so I could put every extra dollar toward this dream. The villa sits right on the Pacific coast with floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the ocean. It has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a deck that wraps around the entire house. When I first walked through it with the realtor, I could hardly believe I was actually in a position to buy something so beautiful. It represented everything I had worked for: independence, security, success, and the ability to create a space that was entirely mine, a place where I could set the rules, where I could invite who I wanted and exclude who I didn't, where I could finally have some control over my own life. I closed on the house 3 weeks ago, and I've been slowly moving in and getting it set up. I hadn't told my family about it yet because, honestly, I wanted to enjoy it in peace for a while before it became another thing for them to have opinions about or requests regarding. But somehow Brittany found out. I think it was through social media. I had posted a picture of the sunset view from my deck, and someone must have recognized the area and mentioned it. Or maybe one of my mutual friends with Brittany saw it and said something. However it happened, within hours of that post going live, my phone was ringing. Madison! Brittany's voice was practically vibrating with excitement. Oh my God, why didn't you tell me you bought a house? And on the beach. This is incredible. For a split second, I felt that old, familiar warmth. Maybe she was genuinely happy for me. Maybe this time would be different. Thanks, Britt. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's been a long time coming. I bet. God, you've been working so hard. You totally deserve this. She paused, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. So when can I see it? I'm dying to visit. And there it was. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, tell me about the house. Immediately to when she could visit. Well, I'm still getting settled in, I said carefully. Maybe in a few weeks once I have everything set up. Oh, that's perfect, she interrupted, because actually I've been meaning to tell you. I'm planning this amazing girls' trip for my birthday next month. You know how I've been so stressed with work and everything. I really need a vacation. And when I saw your post, it's like the universe is telling me this is meant to be. My stomach started to sink. Brittany, just think about it. We could have the most incredible week at your place. It would be so much better than some expensive resort and way more fun because it's family. Plus, I could finally see your new house. It's perfect. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was an assumption delivered with the kind of enthusiasm that made it seem like she was doing me a favour by wanting to vacation at my house. How many people are we talking about? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Oh, not that many. Just my core group, maybe 10 or 12 girls. Definitely no more than 15. We're all super clean and respectful and will totally help with cleanup and everything. 15 people in my brand new house for a week. Brittany, I don't think that's a good idea. The house is really not set up for that many people and I'm still getting everything organised. Madison. Her tone shifted, becoming the patient, slightly condescending voice she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. It's my birthday. I'm going through a really tough time right now with work and dating and everything. I really need this. And you have this amazing house just sitting there. It's not like you're using all 4 bedrooms at once. The familiar guilt started creeping in, the old pattern trying to reassert itself. Be understanding, Madison. Be the good sister who doesn't make waves. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was sitting in my own house, looking out at my own ocean view, surrounded by furniture I had bought with money I had earned. Maybe it was remembering all those years of being the accommodating one, the understanding one, the one who always said yes. I need to think about it, I said. Think about what? Madison, it's family. Family helps family, and it's not like I'm asking you to pay for anything. We just need a place to stay. You'd be saving us thousands of dollars on hotel costs. There it was again. Family helps family. The magic phrase that was supposed to make me forget about my own comfort, my own boundaries, my own right to say no to my own house. I said I need to think about it, I repeated, and hung up before she could argue. But I knew Brittany, and I knew this wasn't over. When Brittany wanted something, she didn't take no for an answer easily. She'd be back, probably with backup from our parents, about family obligations and how I should be grateful to have people who want to spend time with me. I spent the next few days trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Part of me wanted to just say yes, like I always had. It would be easier. It would avoid conflict. It would maintain the family peace that I had spent my entire life protecting. But another part of me, a part that was getting stronger every day I spent in my own house, living my own life, was tired of being the family pushover. I was tired of my boundaries being treated as suggestions. I was tired of being expected to sacrifice my own comfort for everyone else's convenience. I was 32 years old. I owned a successful business. Successful. I had just bought a $2 million house with my own money. When exactly was I going to be allowed to have my own opinions about my own life? The answer came sooner than I expected. My phone rang at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my home office, working on a marketing strategy for a new client, when Brittany's name popped up on my screen. "We're on our way to you," she announced, without even saying hello. "There will be 15 of us. Prepare beds, towels, slippers, food. We'll be staying for 3 weeks. We'll be there in 40 minutes, so hurry up." I stared at my phone, convinced I had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "My birthday trip. I figured instead of asking and having you stress about it, I'd just handle the planning myself." Everyone's so excited. We rented a van, bought groceries, planned activities. It's going to be amazing. Just make sure there are enough towels for everyone, and maybe order some pizzas for tonight since we'll be hungry from the drive. 3 weeks, 15 people, 40 minutes notice, and she expected me to provide food, towels, and whatever else they needed in my brand new house that I hadn't even finished setting up yet. I felt something shift inside me, like a door slamming shut on 32 years of being the accommodating little sister. "Brittany," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "I never agreed to this." "Oh, come on, Madison. Don't be difficult. We're already on the road. Everything's planned. You can't just cancel now." Difficult. There was that word again. The word that had been used to shame me into compliance my entire life. But you know what? Maybe it was time to be difficult. "I'm not cancelling anything," I said. "I never agreed to anything in the first place. You planned a vacation at my house without asking me." "I did ask. I asked you last week. You told me you wanted to plan a trip. I said I needed to think about it. That's not the same as saying yes." There was a pause, and I could hear muffled voices in the background, probably her friends asking what was wrong. "Madison, we'll be there in 35 minutes. Everything is already arranged. Don't do this to me on my birthday." Don't do this to her, as if I was the one creating the problem by not wanting 15 strangers in my house for 3 weeks with no notice. I walked to my window and looked out at the ocean, my ocean view in my house that I had worked 8 years to afford. "Brittany, you need to turn around and go home." "What?" Her voice went up about 3 octaves. "Madison, I'm not kidding around here. We took time off work. We planned everything. People are counting on this." "Then you should have asked me before you planned it." "I don't understand why you're being like this. It's not like you're using the space. You don't have kids. You don't have a boyfriend. You're just rattling around in that big house by yourself. What's the harm in sharing it with family?" And there it was, the same dismissal of my life, my choices, my right to my own space that had been going on for decades. Because I didn't have kids or a husband, my house was apparently just sitting there waiting for other people to use it. "The harm," I said, "is that it's my house and I don't want 15 people staying in it for 3 weeks, especially not with no notice." "Fine," she snapped. "We'll just stay for a week then, or just the weekend. Come on, Madison, work with me here." She still didn't get it. She thought this was a negotiation about duration, not about the fundamental issue of consent and respect. "No, Brittany, turn around and go home." The phone exploded with noise. Brittany crying, her friends asking what was happening, accusations about how I was ruining everything and being selfish and not caring about family. I hung up. For about 30 seconds I felt terrible. The old guilt rushed in like a tidal wave. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let them come for a few days. Maybe I was overreacting, but then I looked around my beautiful living room with my carefully chosen furniture and my peaceful ocean view, and I realized something important. This was my home. I had earned it. I had the right to decide who stayed in it and when. For the first time in my life, I was going to put my own boundaries first. I called my best friend Sarah, who happens to be a lawyer, and told her what was happening. "Oh, hell no," she said immediately. "Madison, please tell me you're not going to let them guilt you into this." "I'm not," I said, and I was surprised by how certain I sounded. "But they're going to show up anyway. I know Brittany. She's going to think she can pressure me in person." "Then we need to be ready for that," Sarah said. "Let me make some calls." Within an hour, I had the number for a private security service that could have someone at my house within 30 minutes if needed. I also had a clear understanding of my rights as a property owner and what constituted trespassing. More importantly, I had a plan. I wasn't 17 anymore, sitting in my Honda Civic crying about my place in the family. I wasn't the little sister who had to understand and accommodate and sacrifice for everyone else's happiness. I was 32 years old. I owned a successful business, and I had just bought a $2 million house. It was time to act like it. 37 minutes later, I heard the rumble of vehicles pulling into my driveway. I was standing in my living room, looking out through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I watched as 2 large rental vans parked right in front of my house. The audacity was breathtaking. They had actually shown up. The van doors slid open and people started pouring out. I counted them as they emerged, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 15. 15 people, just like Brittany had said. They were stretching, laughing, taking pictures of my house, and pulling suitcases and coolers out of the vans like they were checking into a resort. Brittany was the first one to the door. She didn't knock. She tried the handle first, assuming it would be unlocked and ready for her arrival. When it didn't turn, she started pounding on the door with the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that suggested she thought this was all part of some playful game. "Madison, we're here. Open up." "D-E," she called out, her voice carrying that sing-song tone people use when they think they're being charming. "Wait until you see all the stuff we brought. We have wine, snacks, decorations. We're going to have the most amazing time." I could hear her friends in the background commenting on the house, the view, how lucky they were to be staying somewhere so incredible. One girl was already trying to peer through the windows, cupping her hands around her eyes to see inside. I walked to the door, but didn't open it. Instead, I spoke through the intercom system that connected to the front entrance. "Brittany, I told you not to come. I never agreed to this." There was a moment of confused silence, then nervous laughter from the group outside. "Madison, what are you doing? Open the door. We drove for 4 hours to get here." Brittany's voice was still cheerful, but I could hear the edge of irritation creeping in. "Come on, stop being weird and let us in. Everyone's tired and we need to use the bathroom." "I'm not being weird. I'm telling you that you can't stay here. I never gave you permission to bring 15 people to my house for 3 weeks. The cheerfulness in Brittany's voice evaporated completely. "Madison, Open this door right now. I'm not kidding around. We planned this entire trip around staying here. People took time off work. We bought groceries. We can't just turn around and go home. You should have thought of that before you planned a vacation at someone else's house without asking them. I could hear her friends starting to murmur among themselves. Someone asked what was going on. Another person wondered out loud if there had been some kind of miscommunication. But Brittany's voice cut through all of it, getting louder and more aggressive. Madison, this is ridiculous. I'm your sister. This is what family does for each other. You have this huge house just sitting here empty, and you won't even let your own sister use it for 1 week? 3 weeks, I corrected through the intercom. You said 3 weeks, and it's not sitting here empty. I live here. Whatever, 1 week, 3 weeks, what's the difference? You're being completely unreasonable. That's when she started really pounding on the door, not knocking, pounding, the kind of aggressive banging that was meant to intimidate me into opening up. Her friends were starting to sound uncomfortable, and I heard someone suggest that maybe they should just find a hotel. No! Brittany snapped at them. We're not going to a hotel. This is my sister's house, and she's going to let us in. Madison! She was shouting now. Open this door. I know you can hear me. Stop being such a selfish bitch and let your family in. The name calling was new. In all our years of family dysfunction, Brittany had never actually called me names to my face. It was always passive-aggressive comments, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation. But apparently, having an audience of her friends was bringing out a different side of her. Madison, I'm not leaving. Do you hear me? I'm not leaving. She was practically screaming now. Open this door, or I'm going to call Mom and Dad. I'm going to tell them exactly how you're treating your own sister. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. They're here, I said when she answered. How bad is it? She's screaming at my front door and calling me names. Her friends look uncomfortable, but they're not leaving. Okay, I'm on my way. Should I call the security company? I looked out the window again. Brittany was now trying to look through all the ground floor windows. And I could see her directing her friends to different sides of the house. One guy was actually walking around to the back deck, testing doors and windows. Yeah, call them. This is officially trespassing. 20 minutes later, a private security vehicle pulled up behind the rental vans. 2 uniformed officers got out and immediately changed the entire dynamic of the situation. Brittany's friends, who had been milling around my property like they owned it, suddenly clustered together nervously. The guy who had been testing my back doors quickly returned to the front of the house. Sarah arrived right behind the security team, carrying a folder of documents and wearing her most professional expression. She walked straight up to Brittany, who was still standing at my front door, looking defiant. "Excuse me," Sarah said in her lawyer voice, crisp and authoritative. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, attorney for the property owner. I need to inform you that you are currently trespassing on private property." Brittany whirled around, her eyes wide with shock. "Trespassing? This is my sister's house. I'm family." "That's irrelevant," Sarah replied calmly. "This is private property, and the owner has not given you permission to be here. You need to leave immediately." "You don't understand," Brittany said, her voice getting that panicked edge it always got when things didn't go her way. "There's been a misunderstanding. My sister invited us. We planned this whole trip. "Tell them, Madison," she called toward the house. "Tell them you invited us." I opened the door for the first time since they'd arrived, but I stayed in the doorway. I didn't step outside, and I certainly didn't invite anyone in. "I never invited you," I said clearly, making sure everyone could hear me. "I specifically told you not to come. I told you that I didn't want 15 people staying in my house for 3 weeks, and you came anyway." The security officers exchanged glances, and one of them stepped forward. "Mum," he said to Brittany, "the property owner is asking you to leave. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll need to call the police and have you removed for trespassing." "This is insane," Brittany exploded. "Madison, what is wrong with you? These are your friends too." She gestured wildly at the group behind her. "You know half these people. Remember Jenny from high school and Mike from your college orientation? They were so excited to see you." I looked at the group more carefully. She was right. I did recognize a few faces. People I had been friendly with years ago, but hadn't spoken to in forever. People who probably had no idea they were being used as emotional leverage in a family manipulation scheme. "Hi, Jenny." "Hi, Mike," I said politely. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this, but I never agreed to host anyone." Brittany planned this trip without asking me. I could see the realization dawning on their faces. The uncomfortable shifting, the awkward glances between them. They were starting to understand that they weren't welcome guests. They were props in Brittany's tantrum. "Maybe we should just find a hotel," Jenny said quietly to Brittany. "This seems like a family thing, and we don't want to intrude." "No," Brittany's voice cracked with desperation. "We're not intruding. Madison is just she's going through something right now. She's been really stressed with work and everything. She doesn't mean this." She was trying to save face in front of her friends by making me look like the unstable one. The irony was incredible. She was standing on my property screaming at my door after showing up uninvited with 15 people, but I was the one who was being unreasonable. "Actually," I said, stepping fully outside for the first time, "I'm not stressed at all. I'm perfectly fine. What I am is tired of being treated like a doormat by my own family." The word doormat hung in the air like a challenge. Brittany's face flushed red, and I could see her struggling between trying to maintain her image in front of her friends and her genuine fury at being called out. "Doormat?" she repeated, her voice getting dangerously quiet. "Is that what you think this is about?" "I think this is about you assuming you can do whatever you want with my life and my property because you've always been able to guilt me into going along with it before." "Guilt you?" Her voice was rising again. "Madison, I'm your sister. Family is supposed to help each other. You have this amazing house, and I just wanted to share a special birthday with the people I care about. How is that unreasonable?" The unreasonable part is doing it without asking. The unreasonable part is showing up with 15 people and expecting me to provide food, towels, and accommodations for 3 weeks with 40 minutes notice. The unreasonable part is calling me selfish when I say no to something I never agreed to in the first place. Sarah stepped closer to me, a subtle show of support that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the group. "Furthermore," Sarah added, opening her folder, "I have documentation here showing that this property is owned solely by Madison Turner, purchased with her own funds, and that she has the absolute legal right to determine who is and isn't welcome on her property. The official paperwork seemed to deflate some of Brittany's righteous indignation. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. There were legal implications, witnesses, and professional consequences if she didn't back down. But Brittany had never been good at backing down. "Fine," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Fine. You want to be selfish? You want to choose your stupid house over your own family? Then that's exactly what you're doing, Madison. You're choosing to be alone in your big empty house instead of being surrounded by people who love you. People who love me don't show up at my house uninvited and then scream at me when I don't let them in," I replied. "We wouldn't have had to show up uninvited if you ever actually invited us to anything. When was the last time you reached out to any of us? When was the last time you tried to include your family in your life? You buy this fancy house and then act like you're too good for the people who raised you." And there it was, the manipulation tactic I had been waiting for. Turn it around, make it my fault for not being welcoming enough, for not reaching out enough, for not including them enough. Never mind that I'd been excluded from Thanksgiving dinner just 2 months ago. Never mind that I had spent my entire life accommodating their needs while they ignored mine. "The people who raised me," I said slowly, "taught me that my needs didn't matter, didn't. They taught me that I should always say yes, always be understanding, always put everyone else first. They taught me that wanting my own space, my own boundaries, my own life made me selfish. Well, maybe it's time I got a little selfish." The security officers were getting restless, and I could see neighbours starting to peer out their windows at the commotion. This was exactly the kind of scene I had hoped to avoid, but Brittany had forced the situation into a public spectacle. "You have 5 minutes to get your things and leave the property," one of the officers announced. "After that, we call the police." The reality of potential police involvement seemed to finally penetrate Brittany's fury. Her friends were already moving toward the vans, clearly eager to get out of what had become an extremely uncomfortable situation. "This isn't over, Madison," Brittany said, but her voice had lost its edge. She sounded more defeated now than angry. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this. The whole family is going to know exactly how you treated us." "Good," I said. "Make sure you tell them the whole story. Tell them how you planned a 3-week vacation at my house without asking me. Tell them how you showed up with 15 people and expected me to house and feed everyone. Tell them how you called me a selfish bitch when I said no. I want them to know exactly what happened here." For the first time since this whole confrontation started, Brittany looked uncertain. I think she had expected me to back down, to beg her not to tell our parents, to try to smooth things over like I always had before. My willingness to let the family know the truth seemed to surprise her. "You're really going to let us drive 4 hours home with nowhere to stay?" she asked, and I could hear her grasping for one last guilt trip. "You're really going to pretend that this is my responsibility?" I countered. "You created this situation, Brittany. You made the plans, you told people where they were staying, you chose not to get my permission first. The consequences of those choices are not my problem to solve." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through different emotional strategies. The anger hadn't worked. The guilt wasn't working. The public pressure wasn't working. For maybe the first time in our relationship, she was encountering a version of Madison who wouldn't be manipulated. "Fine," she said finally, but it was a different kind of fine than before. This one sounded like defeat. "We'll leave, but don't expect me to forget this, Madison. Don't expect things to just go back to normal." "I don't," I said. "I really don't. Day. The next hour was chaos. Phone calls, text messages, voicemails, social media posts. My entire family mobilized to express their opinions about what had happened. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications, and I finally just turned it off and enjoyed the silence. My mum called first. Of course, I let it go to voicemail, but I could see the notification for a 3-minute message that I was absolutely not ready to listen to yet. Then my dad. Another long voicemail. My Aunt Carol, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, somehow got my number and left a message about family unity and Christian forgiveness. My cousin Derek sent a text that just said, "Wow, Madison, really?" But the most telling response came from my Uncle Tom, my mum's brother, who sent a simple text. "Good for you. About time someone set some boundaries in this family." That message meant more to me than I expected it to. Uncle Tom had always been the black sheep, the one who lived across the country and only showed up for major holidays. I was starting to understand that maybe he hadn't been avoiding the family out of indifference. Maybe he had been protecting himself from exactly the kind of drama that had just played out in my driveway. The social media situation was interesting too. Within hours, there were vague posts from several of Brittany's friends about family drama and entitled people and learning who your real friends are. I didn't engage with any of it, but Sarah was screenshot everything just in case things escalated further. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang with a call from my mum. I debated not answering, but I knew I was going to have to deal with this eventually. "Madison Christine Turner," she started, using my full name like I was 12 years old again. "I cannot believe what your sister just told me. Please tell me there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Mum. Brittany planned a vacation at my house without asking me, showed up with 15 people and expected me to accommodate them for 3 weeks. I said no." "But sweetheart, she's your sister, and it was her birthday trip. You couldn't just let them stay for a few days." The fact that she immediately jumped to negotiating the length of the stay, rather than addressing the fundamental violation of consent, told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. "Mum, would you let 15 strangers stay in your house for 3 weeks if someone else planned it without asking you?" "They're not strangers, Madison. Some of them are people you've known for years. And Brittany is your sister, not someone else. Being related to me doesn't give Brittany the right to make decisions about my house and my life without consulting me." There was a long pause, and I could hear my mum taking one of her deep, dramatic breaths that usually preceded a lecture about family values. "Madison, I'm very disappointed in you. This is not how we raised you. Family takes care of family. When someone in this family needs help, we help them. We don't slam doors in their faces and call security like they're criminals." I didn't slam any doors in anyone's face. I kept my door closed to people who showed up at my house uninvited, and I called security when they refused to leave after I asked them to. That's what any reasonable person would do in that situation. Any reasonable person would have opened their door to their sister. Any reasonable sister would have asked before planning a vacation at someone else's house. The conversation continued in circles for another 20 minutes. My mum kept trying to make this about family loyalty and me being ungrateful for everything they had done for me growing up. I kept trying to make it about basic respect and boundaries. We weren't even having the same conversation. Finally, she played her trump card. Your father is very upset about this, Madison. He's saying maybe we need to reconsider having you at Christmas this year if this is how you're going to treat your sister. The threat of being excluded from Christmas was supposed to scare me into compliance. It was the nuclear option in our family's emotional warfare, the threat of total exclusion unless I fell in line. But you know what? I had just spent Thanksgiving alone, and it had been one of the most peaceful holidays I'd had in years. If Dad wants to uninvite me from Christmas because I wouldn't let Brittany bring 15 people to my house without permission, then maybe I'm better off not being there, I said. The sharp intake of breath from my mum told me this wasn't the response she had expected. Madison, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. I'm tired of being expected to set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I'm tired of being the family member who has to sacrifice her own comfort and boundaries to keep the peace. I'm 32 years old, Mum. I own my own business, I own my own house, and I get to decide who stays in it. This is not the daughter I raised, she said, her voice getting cold and distant. You're right, I agreed. The daughter you raised would have opened the door, let them all in, spent her own money feeding them for 3 weeks, and then thanked Brittany for choosing her house for the vacation. But that daughter was miserable, Mom. That daughter spent her whole life feeling like she didn't matter in her own family. The line went quiet for so long that I thought she might have hung up. I think you need some time to think about what's really important to you, she finally said. When you're ready to apologize to your sister and make this right, you know our number. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my beautiful living room, looking out at the ocean, and waited for the crushing wave of guilt and regret that had followed every confrontation with my family my entire life. It didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Pure, clean relief. For the first time in my 32 years, I had set a boundary with my family and held it. I had said no to something I didn't want to do, and I had stuck to it even when they brought out every emotional manipulation tactic in their arsenal. And you know what? The world hadn't ended. My house was still beautiful. My business was still successful. My life was still exactly what I had built it to be. The phone calls and messages continued for days. Some family members took Brittany's side completely, painting me as a selfish, ungrateful daughter who had abandoned her family for material possessions. Others seemed confused by the whole situation and kept trying to play peacemaker, suggesting compromises that would let everyone save face. But a few people surprised me. My cousin Sarah, different Sarah from my lawyer friend, called to tell me that she had been in a similar situation with her brother a few years ago, and that setting boundaries had actually improved their relationship in the long run. My grandmother, who I hadn't spoken to in months, left a voicemail saying she was proud of me for standing up for myself. And Uncle Tom called to tell me that he had been waiting years for someone in the family to call out the toxic dynamics that had been going on for decades. Your parents have turned Brittany into a monster, he said bluntly. They've spent so many years enabling her and making excuses for her that she genuinely believes the world owes her whatever she wants. And they've spent so many years expecting you to accommodate her that they can't understand why you'd ever say no. It was validating to hear someone else in the family acknowledge what I had been experiencing my whole life. 3 months later, my phone rang with a call from Brittany. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Madison? Her voice was smaller than I had heard it in years. Can we talk? What about? About what happened? About everything, I guess. I was quiet for a moment, trying to gauge whether this was a genuine attempt at reconciliation or another manipulation tactic. Okay, I said finally, but we're going to have very different conversations if you're calling to apologize versus if you're calling to try to convince me I was wrong. I'm calling to apologize, she said, and she sounded like she meant it. Madison, what I did was completely out of line. I should never have planned a trip to your house without asking you. I should never have shown up with all those people. I should never have called you names or made a scene. I was wrong. It was the first real apology I had ever gotten from Brittany in my entire life. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. I've been thinking about what you said about being treated like a doormat, and I talked to my therapist about it. She paused. I didn't realise I was doing that to you. I guess I thought that's just how our family worked. That you were okay with always being the flexible one. I was never okay with it, I said gently. I just didn't know how to say no without causing a huge fight. And when you finally did say no, I caused a huge fight anyway, she said with a laugh that sounded more sad than amused. We talked for over an hour. It wasn't a magical conversation that fixed everything, but it was honest in a way that we had never been before. Brittany acknowledged the pattern of taking me for granted, and I acknowledged that I had enabled it by never setting boundaries until I exploded. She was still facing consequences from the villa incident. Several of her friends had pulled back from their friendship with her after seeing how she had behaved, and our parents were finally starting to question whether they had been enabling her for too long. I'm not calling to ask if we can be close again right away, she said toward the end of the conversation. I know I have a lot of work to do on myself, but I wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did, and I don't blame you for it anymore. It was a start. The villa has become everything I dreamed it would be. I've hosted friends here, had peaceful working retreats, thrown small dinner parties for people who appreciate the space and respect my boundaries. I've learned the difference between being generous and being taken advantage of, between being loving and being a pushover. Some family relationships have been permanently damaged by what happened that day. I haven't spoken to my parents since the Christmas threat, and honestly, I'm okay with that. They made their choice about whose behaviour they wanted to support, and I made mine about what I was willing to tolerate. But other relationships have gotten stronger. Uncle Tom and I talk regularly now. My grandmother and I have reconnected, and slowly, carefully, Brittany and I are building something that might eventually look like a healthy sibling relationship. The most important thing I learned from all of this is that you teach people how to treat you. For 32 years, I taught my family that they could ignore my needs, dismiss my feelings, and expect me to sacrifice my own comfort for their convenience. I taught them that if they just pushed hard enough, I would always give in eventually. But you can change what you teach people. You can start setting different expectations. You can start requiring respect instead of just hoping for it. Have you ever felt like you were only remembered when your family needed something? Have you ever felt like you were just a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved? If you're nodding your head right now, I want you to know that you deserve better than that. You deserve to have your boundaries respected. You deserve to have your no accepted the first time you say it. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how you teach people how to love you properly. It's how you protect your own energy so you can show up as your best self for the people who truly value you. My villa isn't just a house. It's a symbol of my independence, my self-worth, and my right to create a life that makes me happy. Every morning when I wake up to that ocean view, I'm reminded that I built this life through my own hard work, and I get to decide who I share it with. If my story resonates with you, please share it with anyone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and reclaiming your power. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop enabling their worst behaviours and start requiring their best ones.